Yet another tornado threat is coming to the Midwest, and it's going to roll towards Pennsylvania and New York tomorrow, bringing all hazards of severe weather, including damaging winds, large to very large hail, some flooding, and perhaps a couple of tornadoes. I'm going to break down everything that you need to know so that you can stay safe and stay weather aware. So let's get right into the forecast. First up, your day one categorical outlook, and you're going to notice 3 different 2 out of 5 slight risks are going to be in place. One of those right off the Rockies in eastern Colorado, even close to Cheyenne, Wyoming as well. That's going to be more of a wind and hail threat. And then down towards the Ozarks, mostly through Arkansas and towards the Mississippi Delta, you are going to see another 2 out of 5 slight risk. Again, that's more of a wind and hail driven threat. And then finally, you have a 2 out of 5 slight risk back towards, you guessed it, Illinois into Indiana, northwestern Ohio, even southern Michigan. And that is going to be where our tornado risk is going to exist for this evening. The Storm Prediction Center has introduced a 5% risk for tornadoes. That's going to be across northern Indiana, even into southwestern Michigan. But then you're also going to see a much larger 2% risk for tornadoes from eastern Illinois and then all the way up through Michigan, even including northwestern Ohio as well, and just north of Indianapolis. So a large area where a tornado definitely can't be ruled out today. And I will say it's possible that that 5% gets downgraded back down to a 2% later on this afternoon with one of the updated outlooks, just depending on how much cloud cover we're going to get and if we are able to get that destabilization where we could see those discrete cells firing off ahead of the cold front later on this afternoon. On our wind outlook, you're going to notice our 3 areas of concern again. That is going to include a SIG 1 risk that is going to be in eastern New Mexico and southeastern Colorado, closer to Pueblo or maybe Colorado Springs. There's going to be a 15% risk for damaging wind gusts out there in eastern Colorado in yellow as well. And then you're going to see our other main area of concern where we have 2 different 15% risks for damaging wind gusts. One of those is going to be, again, in Arkansas, maybe down closer to the Ozarks and the Mississippi Delta. And then another one back towards Indiana, southern Michigan, eastern Illinois, and northwestern Ohio as well. On our hail outlook, you're going to see another SIG 1 off of the Rockies, and that's going to be in all of eastern Colorado and even towards Cheyenne, Wyoming, and parts of the Nebraska Panhandle. That's an area where we could see some of those large to very large hailstones, maybe up to tennis ball size hail this afternoon and evening in isolated instances, with any storms that can really remain organized with strong updrafts. And then we're going to see another large 5% hail risk and then a smaller 15% hail risk in there. That's going to be, again, for eastern Illinois, northern Indiana, southern Michigan, and northwestern Ohio. You'll also notice a rather large fire weather risk, including a critical risk, and there's also the risk for some isolated dry thunderstorms in western Montana and parts of Idaho as well. But you're going to see that elevated risk for fire weather is going to stretch all the way through California, Nevada, up through Oregon and Washington, even parts of Idaho as well. And then there's also another one that is close to LA, just north of LA. And then you're going to see that critical fire risk is going to be in place near the tri-state region of Nevada, California, and Oregon. Tonight's severe weather is going to be mostly brought to you by that low pressure system, and you can watch over the Great Lakes as it moves to the southeast and those storms just spin around it. And you're going to see a cold front is going to trail on through there and push down to the southeast as well, and that's going to drive our severe weather in that neck of the woods. But most importantly, for the timing of our severe weather, you're going to notice that by the early afternoon here, maybe by 1 p.m., we're already seeing scattered storms starting to fire off towards Michigan and Indiana. But it's really as we go on a little bit later in the afternoon towards around 4 to 5 p.m., where we could get some of that discrete or semi-discrete supercell action, maybe a couple more organized clusters, and that's going to promote that greater concern for any possible tornado risk as we go a little bit later on into the afternoon and early evening hours. And you're also going to see explosive thunderstorm development back down towards Arkansas, where we're going to be seeing a lot of destabilization, and then off the Rockies again, and in eastern New Mexico as well, you're going to see a lot of that thunderstorm development as well, where we could see a lot of those larger hailstones, especially up there in eastern Colorado. So as we go forward in time across the entire United States, all 3 areas of storms are going to continue to progress, and that line is going to eventually push on through the Ohio Valley by the later evening hours here. This is only by 10 p.m., and we're still seeing some stronger storms in Indiana. And so that is another possibility where an embedded tornado could definitely be possible later on this evening. And that is going to take us through the end of our forecast period anyway, until around 10 p.m. tonight, where we're still seeing a lot of scattered thunderstorms down in the southeast, even down in eastern Colorado and through eastern New Mexico as well. And we'll be broadcasting all of this tonight. My main hesitation with the tornado risk for today is you're going to notice in the afternoon and evening, our 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity values really fall off a cliff, and you're not going to see a lot in our main area of concern. And so I do think that tornado risk is a little bit lower end. I'm not sure if that 5% will hold throughout the day. You will see later on in the evening, there is going to be a little bit of an uptick where we could have a little bit more helicity for any storms that maybe persist, but we're not expecting super robust thunderstorm development to still be active that late in the evening. So we'll see what happens with this, but I don't think there's going to be a major tornado risk. However, we are near the state of Illinois in 2026, so you never know. As we look at our 0 to 6 kilometer bulk shear, this is the main reason I'm decently confident at least a couple of larger hailstones this evening. As back towards the Rockies, you're going to see 40 plus knots of shear available to some of these storms, and that's going to help separate your updrafts from your downdrafts and keep these storms organized out there. And paired with decent mid-level lapse rates, that is definitely going to promote that risk for some of those larger hailstones, maybe up to tennis ball size. But you're going to notice in our tornado risk zone, there isn't really as much shear available to keep those storms organized, and I think that's going to lower our overall tornado potential. And I definitely still think we could see a couple of tornadoes tonight, but I don't think we're going to be looking at a very large-scale tornado event. I'm just not that confident in it. And finally, I wanted to show with our surface-based CAPE that we're going to be seeing a lot of instability present, especially down towards Arkansas, and that's why we're going to see a lot of that explosive thunderstorm growth down there. It's going to be very messy, but we're going to be looking at the potential for some stronger gusts of wind, maybe a couple of hailstones mixed in there for any updrafts that really get themselves going. There is going to be enough instability present for sure back into our tornado risk zone as well, but you don't really need as much instability with that forcing mechanism anyway because we have that cold front rolling on through. And then back towards eastern Colorado, definitely enough instability there to get us those storms that could produce some of those larger hailstones. As we look ahead to Thursday's severe weather outlook, you're going to see that same low pressure system is going to continue on down to the southeast, and it's going to bring another round of severe weather, this time a little bit more to the northeast here. Areas like Pennsylvania and New York going to be included in a 2 out of 5 slight risk, and there will be at least some tornado potential in there as well. And then more storms off of the Rockies, definitely going to be a possibility. Here's a look at that tornado potential. There's going to be a 2% risk that's outlined here from Jersey and Pennsylvania all the way up through New York, Vermont, even parts of Western Massachusetts and Connecticut, where definitely a tornado could be possible, but we're not looking again at a super significant tornado event tomorrow. But definitely make sure your head's on a swivel out here in the Northeast for Thursday. Thursday's wind outlook is going to include a Sig 1 risk again right off the Rockies, where we could see some 60 to maybe 70 mile per hour wind gusts, maybe inching closer to 75 miles per hour. And then you're going to see that 15% risk for damaging wind gusts is going to be present from Maryland all the way up through central New York as well. Now, there's a little bit less confidence in the hail outlook for tomorrow, but there is going to be a Sig 1 risk that's in place near the Black Hills and the Badlands, down through the Nebraska Panhandle, even parts of eastern Wyoming as well. And I do think that area could slightly expand, and we could see a 15% introduced as we see how things resolve for tomorrow. But definitely some larger hailstones possible there for tomorrow afternoon and evening. And then there is going to be another 5% risk from the mid-Atlantic up through New England. That is going to be a little bit of a less confident risk as well, where we could see some isolated instances of some damaging hail with that line of storms as it continues through tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow's fire weather risk is going to be very similar to today's fire weather risk. It's going to include a critical fire weather risk near the tri-state region again of Nevada, California, and Oregon, but you're going to see pretty large areas included in an elevated fire weather risk, including Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, Nevada, and even down towards LA as well again. And then you're going to see that isolated dry thunderstorm risk as well for central western Montana. As we come out of Wednesday evening and we start to shift into Thursday, you're going to see all those storms start to dissipate, and by morning, it's a little bit more clear. But look at around 4 p.m. here in the afternoon on Thursday. And again, it's all driven by the same low pressure system as it continues to propagate down to the southeast. But look at all of the thunderstorm development you're going to have all the way from basically the coast of Alabama all the way up through Quebec even. So just a very, very active day of thunderstorm development in the eastern part of the United States and even the eastern parts of Canada as well, where you're going to be seeing just a lot of thunderstorm development. But again, that severe weather risk is mostly going to be limited towards the Northeast, where we could see some stronger storms out here with at least some tornado potential as we roll into Thursday afternoon and evening. And a lot of that will be resolved as we figure out what happens with today's severe weather. I also wanted to point out, just take a look at this bowling ball MCS that's forecast, at least by the 6Z HER anyway, to start rolling on through areas like North Platte in the afternoon here. This one's just going to continue diving on down to the southeast here in Nebraska. And watch as it continues forward in time. It's just going to start to fall apart eventually. But that one definitely could pose a little bit of a windbag threat for areas like North Platte if something like that does materialize. Now, will that exactly materialize in the way that it's forecast? Probably not. But it's definitely something to watch for a possibility for tomorrow. Here's a look at what's driving that surface low pressure system that I keep mentioning. You're going to see this trough really digging on down through the Great Lakes and shifting just a little bit eastward. Again, that's paired with this high pressure system that's been persistent over the Four Corners states. Again, very normal for this time of year. But you're going to notice that by Thursday evening, a little bit of a jet streak starts to form down through the Tennessee Valley and even potentially up into parts of the Northeast. So definitely something to pay attention to for a little bit of enhanced storm activity with some better shearing in that environment and just some better upper level support. Over time here, watch as our surface moisture shifts from being much more potent towards the Midwest and the Ohio Valley here on Wednesday, but on Thursday, watch it really surge up into the Northeast. Again, I think that's going to help promote some of that risk for maybe some tornadic development up in the Northeast where we have some of those more favorable dew points getting into the upper 60s, maybe close to the 70 mark. That's definitely going to be something to pay attention to as we go into Thursday, but it's going to be generally a little bit muggy for a lot of the East Coast tomorrow. I really want to hone in on what's happening in the lowest kilometer of the atmosphere in terms of your shear Thursday evening. Take a look in the Northeast by 10 p.m. here, decent amounts of shear in that lowest kilometer. So if we do have any organized storms along this line of thunderstorms or any discrete storms or semi-discrete storms, there's going to be at least some potential for those QLCS or spin-up type of tornadoes. I don't think we're going to be looking at anything super intense, but definitely some potential for a tornado or two that could be spun up. Again, lower end tornadoes, but still something to pay close attention to for Thursday evening, especially in the later evening hours. Finally, looking ahead towards the start of your weekend on Friday, you're going to see a marginal risk in place for the Dakotas and Nebraska, and then another one back down towards the Carolinas, even into Georgia, where we could see some stronger thunderstorm development for Friday, but a lot of that is still very uncertain. We will be going live tonight covering this severe weather event, so make sure that you're both subscribed and have notifications turned on so that you don't miss that broadcast. But that's going to take us to the end of today's forecast video, so thank you so much for tuning in and trusting us as your source of weather coverage around the United States and even into Canada. A huge thank you goes out to our members as always. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.